Morning, everybody. Canola has been in the news quite a lot lately due to Canada's disagreement with China and China refusing a bunch of major canola shipments. So here is the tweet, quote, hashtag canola crisis, $26 billion industry, millions of tons sit in bins, thousands of farmers looking for cash flow for planting. Entire sector is stalled. Where is our leadership? Why no delegation to China? If it was SNC jobs at stake, there would be action. Yeah, Justin Trudeau has been on a national tour talking about jobs, and, you know, we're looking out for the little guy, and we have to do this for jobs. And going to China is not going to help, in my opinion, because they can't give China what they want. What does China want? They want Meng Wanzhou to be released from U.S. extradition, but that's not going to happen, and Justin Trudeau knows that. Anybody who's paying attention knows that. So Justin Trudeau can't give them what they want, so this canola thing's not going away, and I don't think Justin Trudeau can fix it. So that's a problem. So in the short term and long term, canola's going to be a problematic sector. HuffPost is reporting an update on a story I reported on the other week. Vlad Christian Erema charged after Montreal priest stabbed during Mass. A 26-year-old man has been charged with attempted murder in the stabbing of a Catholic priest during morning Mass at Montreal's St. Joseph's Oratory on Friday. Vlad Christian Erema, who appeared in a Montreal courtroom via video conference Saturday afternoon, is also charged with assault with a weapon for allegedly attacking the oratory's 77-year-old rector with a knife. Erema, who wore a blue and white checked shirt, did not speak during his brief appearance other than to confirm he was represented by a legal aid lawyer. I scroll down. Motive unknown. The incident began shortly before 8:30 a.m. on Friday when a man with a knife rushed to the sanctuary of the landmark church and stabbed Gould in front of dozens of worshippers. Witnesses said a man rose from a pew midway through the morning mass and rounded the altar to stab Gould as he prepared to proclaim the gospel. They said the suspect, who was quickly restrained by those present, did not speak during the attack and waited calmly for police to arrive. Police have not suggested a motive for the attack, but say there's no evidence to suggest the suspect was linked to any group. Crazy. This is Canada in 2019. I find that terribly disconcerting. This is the main part of the video today, and I wanted to show you this article by Miss Robyn is actually the most kind of the opinion pieces and reporting I'm going to show you on Miss Wilson-Raybould. The Liberals are getting ready to eject her from caucus, and they're saying that the reason they're going to eject her from caucus is because she recorded the phone call with Michael Wernick without telling him. Now, Canada is a single consent country. Remember Lindsay Shepherd? She was legally allowed to record that meeting, and she did record that meeting and then released it. She's being sued by those professors because Jordan Peterson is suing those professors. So the professors are alleging that if Miss Shepherd hadn't recorded this, Mr. Peterson wouldn't be suing them. So really, Miss Shepherd is responsible to pay Mr. Peterson the damages because she's the one responsible for the things that they said being widely known and damaging to Mr. Peterson. It's a really roundabout kind of crazy lawsuit, but that's what Lindsay Shepherd is claiming, and these Liberals are claiming basically the same thing. This act is so egregious that we can't believe that you did that, so we're going to eject you from caucus. Don't worry about the fact that Michael Wernick spent 20 minutes heavily pressuring the Attorney General of Canada to play ball and allow SNC a deal when she has previously said no. And not just once, but like multiple times. And she says no multiple times in the released phone call. So this gaslighting of the public is really interesting to watch because it's not like we don't have the internet and like all of this recorded. It's not like we don't have Justin Trudeau saying this is patently false. These allegations are false. Nothing like this happened. And then, I guess it kind of did. Looks kind of like Justin Trudeau's lying a lot. Looks like he has no credibility. And it looks like all of the MPs who are willing to lie with him, and we'll get some names in these articles, are willing to go on record and lie with him. So I hope that they all get exactly what they deserve in October, which is not to be reelected, to be clear. Here's the CBC kindest piece I'm going to show you. And all of my links are in the descriptions. Please go read for yourself if you like. CBC reporting, quote, opinion piece. Wilson-Raybould's intentions might not be completely righteous. And by Robyn. The principal question here is whether the PMO tried to meddle in the justice system, not whether JWR is pure. Let's assume for a moment, since many have already, that Jody Wilson-Raybould's actions as they relate to the SNC-Lavalin saga have indeed been driven by a toxic combination of malevolence and self-importance. Take the position that she, either spurned by the Prime Minister's office or motivated by her own pursuit of power and notoriety, doesn't actually care about the independence of Canada's judiciary or the integrity of our public prosecutions. Rather than she wants to take down the Prime Minister along with those around him so that she may pave the way for new leadership, or else perhaps just sit back and watch the fire burn. And on top of it all, according to this theory, Wilson-Raybould has been willing to push ethical boundaries in pernicious pursuit of her goals, including sowing discord with the Liberal caucus she refers to and surreptitiously recording a December phone call between herself and Canada's then Attorney General and Privy Council clerk, Michael Wernick, the audio of which was released to the Justice Committee and made public last week. Yes, perhaps Wilson-Raybould has the worst of intentions. Take down the leadership, destroy the party, ennoble her reputation, profit somehow. Great. That's an interesting peripheral element. But Wilson-Raybould's character has no bearing on whether the Prime Minister's office tried to interfere in the criminal prosecution of SNC-Lavalin, which is the principal question of this entire affair. Yeah. Her personal motivations have nothing to do with the lengths to which the Liberals have gone to shut down the additional inquiries into what happened, nor does it explain why Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has so struggled to keep his story straight from the time of his first ill-fated blanket denial, and there's a link. What's more, Wilson-Raybould, whatever her intentions, couldn't have somehow compelled Wernick to warn her about Trudeau's mood in the recorded phone call, or tricked him into conveying partisan interests on behalf of the Prime Minister. Quote, "You're not just the Attorney General, you're the Minister of Justice in the Cabinet," he reminded her at one point in the conversation. The fact that Wilson-Raybould recorded the call seems to be further evidence to some that the former Attorney General is enacting some sort of coup. Maybe she is, but the theory that this is all part of an elaborate scheme assumes that she taped the conversation because she could somehow foresee a cabinet shuffle and foresee that she would be moved out of the justice file, and also anticipate an opportunity to share the file publicly, thus proving herself with material to exact her revenge, providing herself with material to exact her revenge. Or perhaps she recorded the conversation because she knew she would be asked to do something improper based on the previous conversations with numerous people on the SNC-Lavalin file. I'll let astute readers decide. And yeah, when I started reading this, I was like, oh man, they're just going down this road. But I like the bait and switch, and I largely agree with this. It is offensive to Canadians to push this line, and I'm going to show you this line is being pushed. Don't worry about the improper actions of the PMO, the Prime Minister himself, Mr. Wernick, and Mr. Butts, who have resigned, both of them. Don't worry about all of that. All of that is nothing compared to this recording a call with Mr. Wernick without telling him, which is legal in Canada. Right? Okay, National Post reporting. Wilson-Raybould was, quote, deceptive to secretly record call with Wernick, Labour Minister says. The Liberals escalated their criticism Sunday of Jody Wilson-Raybould's decision to secretly record a phone call with the country's top bureaucrat, with a prominent cabinet minister declaring her unease with the former Attorney General remaining in caucus. Labour Minister Patty Hadju told the CBC she believed it was unethical for Wilson-Raybould to secretly record her during December 19th conversation with the Privy Council clerk, Michael Wernick. A 17-minute audio clip was released on Friday by the House of Commons Justice Committee, along with a 43-page brief from Wilson-Raybould that includes emails and text messages. In CBC interview Sunday, Hadjit said she had never recorded a colleague's phone conversation and would never do so covertly. I think it's unethical. I think it's deceptive, Hadjit said. Quote, if you're going to record a conversation and it's between colleagues, I think it's the responsible, ethical thing to do to advise the person on the other end of the phone that you're recording. I scroll down. In her written submission, Wilson-Raybould acknowledges recording the conversation was an, quote, extraordinary and otherwise inappropriate step, but she said she felt it necessary to have an exact record of what was discussed. Wernick declined to comment, but his lawyer, Frank Adaro, said the recording was, quote, inappropriate. The former Attorney General testified earlier this month that she believes she was moved out of the Justice portfolio to Veteran Affairs in mid-January cabinet shuffle as punishment for refusing to succumb to relentless pressure last fall from Trudeau, his senior staff, Wernick, and others to intervene in the SNC-Lavalin case. She resigned from cabinet a month later. Treasury Board President Jane Philpott resigned a week afterward, citing a loss of confidence in how the government has dealt with the ongoing affair. Some Liberal MPs have been growing increasingly upset with Wilson-Raybould and Philpott's seeming desire to keep fanning the flames of the controversy and have been quietly discussing among themselves how to deal with the pair. The expectation now is that the caucus members will insist on expelling them after their next meeting on Wednesday or earlier if an emergency meeting is called. Hadju told the CBC she will defer to the Prime Minister and her Liberal colleagues on whether Wilson-Raybould and Philpott should remain, but added her discomfort at sharing a caucus with someone who might be recording conversations. Quote, "I personally don't feel comfortable with a colleague who may be recording me without my knowledge," she said. Meanwhile, Trudeau's former principal secretary, Gerald Butts, provided information to the Justice Committee Sunday in response to materials filed last week by Wilson-Raybould. He told the Justice Committee in March he believes nobody from the Prime Minister's office did anything wrong and that Wilson-Raybould never complained about facing undue pressure. Butts resigned as Trudeau's principal secretary last month. The document he submitted to committee must be translated into French and the release approved by panel members before public release, and that'll be sometime in 1 or 2 days. But it's interesting that Mr. Butts said that she never complained of undue pressure, but she did directly complain of undue pressure twice to Mr. Wernick. And we all heard that if you were listening to the tapes, and I did a video about it the other day. Here's another one from yesterday, 7:49 p.m., so yesterday evening. Quote, "Should have been gone long ago. Some Liberal MPs want Jody Wilson-Raybould out of caucus. Liberal backbenchers and cabinet ministers alike condemned former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould on Monday for surreptitiously recording a phone conversation with the country's top public servant, Michael Wernick. For many of them, the recording was the last straw in the SNC-Lavalin saga that has engulfed the Trudeau government and proof that the former minister can't be trusted as a member of the Liberal caucus. Jody Wilson-Raybould, she should be gone. Gone. She should have been gone long ago," said Prince Edward Island MP Wayne Easter, calling her secret recording about as low as you can go. The same sentiment was applied by most Liberal MPs to Jane Philpott, who quit cabinet in solidarity with Wilson-Raybould early last month, saying she no longer had confidence in the government's handling of the SNC-Lavalin affair. Quote, "The moment you stop trusting the government, I mean, obviously you shouldn't be in the government, or you shouldn't be in the caucus that supports the government," said Montreal MP Alexander Mendez. Easter, a longtime MP who once served as a Solicitor General, suggests Philpott might have been, quote, "used by Wilson-Raybould," and several others said they'd like to know whether she'd condone the secret taping. So I scroll down. No, I don't. I'm going to leave it there. You can read the rest on your own if you like. But essentially, they are trying to bury the lead here. Like this, they're making the issue about the secret recording, even when they're asked directly about it. So here's Vasi Kapoulas, and she keeps trying to say, do you think there was pressure? She keeps trying to make it about the SNC-Lavalin pressure on the Attorney General. It sounds like there was pressure. I'm trying to get you to answer this question. And the question she answers is not the question asked. And, well, that's, I mean, typical Liberal, right? Like they don't answer questions. They just tap dance around them. So we will watch about a minute and a half, maybe two, and then
I want to read to you
and then another little clip in the middle. But first, here we go. And this is Democratic Institution Minister Karina Gould, not Katarina, Karina.
Your caucus colleague Wayne Long said following the release of the audio recording Jody Wilson-Raybould made of the conversation that she had back in December with Michael Wernick. Mr. Long said, quote, "The recording was surprising. Once, though, you move past the should she have or shouldn't she have, it certainly did, show that there was pressure and an attempt to push for the DPA." Do you agree with your colleague?
Well, I think one of the important things to note is that she recorded someone without their knowledge. And it was very clear that she knew she was recording a conversation and the other person didn't. There are a lot of questions around the ethics and the appropriateness of doing such a thing, particularly as a Privy Councillor, particularly with the public service. Let's remember that the public service's motto is fearless advice and loyal implementation. We need to have spaces in which we can have frank conversations, in which the public service can provide a fulsome picture and provide different points of view.
Okay, I've got this highlighted here, and I say a frank conversation despite the AG saying this is political interference. So she's saying, well, we should have room for having a conversation. Nobody's disagreeing that you should have room for conversation, but conversations were had in September, where the public prosecutor said SNC does not qualify, and then October, and then November, and then this is December, and this is heavy pressure. So you're advocating for an attorney general to say no and then a systemic coordinated pressure to be put on that person? That's what you're saying that a frank conversation is? I think that you've drunk the Kool-Aid, madam. I think that you cannot see the forest from the trees and you don't realize what's being done is actually illegal. You can't do this to an attorney general. You can't say, do this or we're going to fire you. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being pressured to do something you knew was against the law? Or you'd lose your job and have your reputation smeared by your colleagues? How would you react, Miss Gould? It seems like you're gleefully participating in the smearing of Miss Wilson-Raybould, but you're not thinking this through. What if the person you're protecting is wrong? And it looks like he's wrong, like really wrong, and just lying about it. It's crazy. Carry on.
And the very fact of recording that conversation with Canada's top public servant, I think, is very, very concerning.
Yeah, I take your point that there are questions around the ethics of that, but my question was whether you agree with your colleague Wayne Long that it does appear that there was pressure. I mean, we hear in the conversation Mr. Wernick say he's one moment, he's quite determined, quite firm, talking about the Prime Minister. He is in a very firm mood. He is in a pretty firm frame of mind about this, so I'm a bit worried. It is not a good idea for the Prime Minister and his Attorney General to be at loggerheads. Can you understand how your former cabinet colleague, Ms. Wilson-Raybould, would have felt pressured?
So, Vashi, as I have said in many interviews, as cabinet ministers, we feel pressure. There are a lot of difficult issues.
That's sidestepping the question. That's talking about different pressure. That's not answering the question. That's the Liberal tap dance in action. I'm going to answer the question I want, not the question that was asked. The question I want is, oh, we always feel pressure. It's a very pressure-filled job. It's really important, blah, blah, blah. It's trash. It's talking around the point, and it's not answering the question. Okay, I've got one more clip to show you on this one, and I'll just cue it up and be right back. Okay, I'm going to let you watch her walk away from the question. I'm going to put the question in here as Vassy asks it, and we'll watch Miss Gould just walk away without answering the question. And she doesn't even really try to answer the question. She just goes right for it's inappropriate for the tape to be out, and it's inappropriate for Miss Wilson-Raybould.
Mr. Wernick and the Prime Minister, to bolster the government's case, said often that there were multiple occasions for the former minister, referring to Jody Wilson-Raybould, to raise concerns about whether she felt pressure. And Mr. Wernick testified that she did not. The Prime Minister said that she did not, except we hear over and over in this conversation, she says it is entirely inappropriate. And it is political interference. I cannot act in a partisan way. I cannot be politically motivated. All of this screams that. I actually really feel uncomfortable having this conversation because it is wrong. How would that not have been transferred to, I mean, clearly she's raising that issue.
Right. So one thing that I would say is that the Prime Minister's office did release a statement on Friday that was confirmed by the clerk that conversation was not relayed to the Prime Minister. That's an important fact to remember and to put on the table.
One thing I want to mention here is this is the paper of record, right? The CBC, the paper of record. So them saying this on the CBC and then printing that, oh, the Prime Minister was never briefed, despite the fact that his vacation didn't start until 2 days later, right? Like, these timelines don't make sense. They don't add up. It's not accurate, right? So somebody's not telling the truth. So I just wanted to point that out. And here she goes tap dancing away from the question.
Another thing that I would remind you and viewers is that this conversation was recorded. Only one party knew that it was being recorded. The other didn't. And the other fact of the matter is that this tape was also not released until Friday, when when Jody she testified at the Justice Committee. It was not disclosed that she had taped this conversation. There are some real questions around that, and personally, as a cabinet minister who relies on really frank conversations with the public service, who are providing advice to us as to how we should make decisions and what the legalities are and what the information required is to make those decisions, that is a real breach of trust and confidence.
So this is all, Vassy has said, here's the pressure. Trudeau said there was no pressure. Butts said there was no pressure. Here's clear pressure. Trudeau said she didn't bring up pressure. Butts said she didn't bring up pressure. Here's quotes of her bringing up pressure to the clerk of the Privy Council, which is essentially bringing it up to the Prime Minister. So how can you say that? And she says, how dare she record that conversation? How dare she? Right? And says the Prime Minister didn't know. He wasn't briefed on that conversation. So believing that the Prime Minister wasn't briefed on that conversation is a whole other rabbit hole of, if you believe that, you also have to believe that he shuffled cabinet without following up about that thing that was really important to him. Like, come on, really? Like, he was I'm just gonna shuffle cabinet blind. I asked Mr. Wernick to follow up with Jody Wilson-Raybould, and he must have done that, and he must have had a conversation, but I haven't heard back. So I'll just shuffle cabinet. No problem. Yeah, I haven't heard back, so yeah, no questions asked. We'll just shuffle cabinet. What kind of stupid idiots do you think live in Canada? Oh my goodness. So this is the plan. And these Kool-Aid drinking liberals think that we're going to buy it. Listen, if your boss, Ms. Gould, has done something illegal, you shouldn't be closing ranks around him. You should be calling him out. It's your job as an MP in the Liberal government to call out corruption and a corrupt prime minister, a prime minister who's selling us out to globalists. That's your job as an MP. Not to be loyal to Liberals, not to be loyal to Justin Trudeau, to be calling out corruption. This is clear corruption. And you, madam, have targeted the wrong person. Jody Wilson-Raybould, for all her flaws, is standing up to Justin Trudeau and saying, no, this is this far and no farther. And I'm glad that she recorded what she recorded, because without it, they would be able to say it never happened. They would be able to malign her and drag her reputation through the mud. And all of these conversations wouldn't be happening, because they would just say it's hearsay. It's he said, she says. But now it's she says with evidence and backed up papers, documents, texts, and phone calls, audio recordings. Big problems for the Liberals, Miss Gould. The writing's on the wall. Figure it out. And I mean, I think it's too late for you, but my goodness, I hope future people look back at this as a full-blown description of what not to do when you're caught with your hand in the cookie jar. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca.